Greetings and salutations, I'm Calivide, I like to overthink things, and I did a very silly, very stupid thing. I really went, here's a 20-minute video on a quick I expect you to die theory so I could have my hats in the ring in the great theorizing game, to what if I make an hour-long video covering every single game in the I expect you to die franchise and make a cohesive timeline, also important to include fun facts and fill in the blanks on certain topics mentioned in passing during the game. As you can imagine, I not only greatly overestimated my abilities, but also my time management skills. While I'm happy with the quality of the video, it has almost been a year. While that video is going to come out, it has been a massive, massive project that I really didn't think was going to take this long, and I don't want to rush it in the name of getting it out sooner. So I'm going to make a few short videos before I try to post that behemoth. So until I finish that timeline, I'm going to do some more fun speculation-based videos. So enjoy my collection of various observations and hypotheses inspired by I Expect You to Die's little bits of world building. These are very much in the area of speculation. I wouldn't even say they reach hypothesis for the most part. I just want to point out some fun details that I feel go unnoticed. One of the most common tales of spies and espionage is the art of seduction. In Winter Break, Dr. Zor has several books set out on the shelves, many of them relating to the Doctor's crystal and gravity experiments, but also a few that have to do with the specificities of being an evil doctor. These include a guide to secret compartments, evil taxidermy, and Just Shoot Them, the pitfalls of eccentric villainy. But behind all of these is an EOD manual on seduction. While on its own it would be strange but not impossible, after all, who's to say Dr. Zor didn't just kill an agent who happened to have this book on them, it gets a lot more curious when you look at the contents of the safe by Zor's desk. When you open the safe, you find money, a desk chip, and blueprints, but the curious thing is there's an EOD lighter stashed away in it. This alone is odd, seeing how the lighter being tucked away implies that it is important to Zor, but it's even stranger when you look at the portrait it's hidden behind and realize that it's a painting of Valerie Vitti, a notorious EOD agent from the third game. Altogether, it feels like a clear story is being painted, one where an EOD agent used her training in seduction to grow close to Dr. Zor, but is no longer in the Doctor's life as they hold on to whatever memorabilia they have left of her in secure, private locations. This could potentially be why they're seeking revenge, as implied by the handler in the level Squeaky Clean.
We know Zor wants revenge on the agency, but this is a tad extreme.
In I Expect You to Die 2, Operation Safe and Sound, we awaken in an EOD recovery room with our handler telling us we were knocked unconscious and tells us it's time to get back to work. Eventually, as the agent pokes and prods around the room, it is revealed that we are not in the EOD at all, but at a Juniper production set for Zeraxis, and he was pretending to be our handler this entire time. And upon a replay, this feels obvious, as the handler's inflections sound off and there's just a sense of wrongness in his delivery and comments, but there's actually indications that something is wrong before the handler speaks. At the end of each level, the handler gives us a treat of a cupcake and a bottle of champagne, a sort of good job for not dying, and as the agent awakens in the fake EOD, we see, once again, they have a treat, but it's wrong. Instead of a bottle of champagne, there's a glass of wine, something that we see is Juniper's signature drink in the level prior. In addition to this, the cake we are given isn't the usual cupcake with a special mission-specific decoration, it is just a slice of generic cake. It's also just a massive slice, like you can cut this thing with the knife into smaller pieces, it's huge. The sandwich just feels like our metaphorical icing on the cake. More reassurance that this absolutely is our handler because he always ensures his agent gets a sandwich in the first game. There's also a familiar floor mat by the sink on the set, a floor mat that's seen on the floor of the agent's van. While this simply could be a reused asset or something to make the player feel familiar, I think it's much funnier to imagine Juniper going, "Screw you, I'm taking your floor mat!" He would be petty enough. All of this is to ensure a sense of familiarity in the agent, but none of it is quite right, making the whole room fall into a sense of uncanny value that clues you in that something is very, very wrong. That's not even mentioning the sink that doesn't match any of the other blues in the room. I feel like this bothers only me, but that's how it is sometimes. In the level Winter Break, we see Zor's latest evil scheme, Project Machine Z. Looking at the blueprints, we see that the way Project Machine Z works is it uses specific crystals that, when resonating at the correct frequency, have the potential to affect gravity. There are 4 crystal colors, red, blue, green, and this pinkish purple crystal that, when looking at the crystal resonance report, are shown to have an unstable frequency. This crystal being highly reactive is something we see when put near fire, as these are the only crystals that can catch fire and ignite a bright pink flame. In Dr. Zor's Golden Goose operation, the purple crystals are disregarded, the other more stable frequencies being used instead. But when we get to the Death Engine, we see a deep purple, almost black crystal being used to run the gravity controls. When this crystal is removed and placed in the laser beam's reactor, the Death Engine explodes in a massive pinkish purple blast, just like the crystals in Winter Break. Now, while this indicates that the gravity crystal used in the Death Engine is a more refined version of the crystals the agent uses in Winter Break, the implications become much more interesting when you look at the third game, Cog in the Machine. Throughout this game, we learn the lore of the telekinetic implant, that it is powered by a crystal called Kinesium that is bright blue. However, when the crystal overheats, it becomes destabilized and turns a bright pinkish purple with a tendency to explode. When we look at the shockwaves from the Death Engine explosion and the Kinesium explosions, they are shockingly similar, almost identical. This could potentially indicate that Zoraxis was experimenting with Kinesium long before I Expect You to Die 3, they just didn't know what they were working with. After all, gravity manipulation and telekinesis are incredibly close when it comes to powers. Telekinesis is just very specifically affecting the gravity of one object rather than many, like the gravity machine in Project Machine Z. This may even be why Zor went after Prism for her research in the first place by the time the events of I Expect You to Die 3 take place. They could have known they were onto something of great value, but didn't know quite how to make it work the way they wanted it to. Only for Dr. Prism's research to show a much more dangerous, much more lethal use. In I Expect You to Die 2, during Operation Jet Set, Juniper gives the agents many boons to indulge in. Ranging from poisoned food to explosive cigars, most of these treats that the actor leaves for the agent lead to their death, but at the very least, the booze is something that isn't sketchy. Or is it? When we look at the label on the wine Juniper gives the agent, we see it's an Amontillado, a wine that is likely familiar to anyone who attended public school. In Edgar Allan Poe's short story, A Cask of Amontillado, we see a man, Montresor, has been insulted by a dear friend, in heavy quotes, Fortunato. He decides to seek revenge against Fortunato by approaching him at a carnival and taking advantage of his drunken state by saying there was a cask of wine that could pass as an Amontillado, but he needs someone to come check it. Once in agreement, Montresor leaves Fortunato to the Montresor family crypt and chains him to the wall before burying him alive. The whole time Montresor is walling Fortunato in, Fortunato thinks it is a joke until he finally puts it together that there is no Amontillado and this will be his final resting place. So what does the Amontillado matter in Juniper's Jet? This is a 60s era spy game, not an edgy gothic novel. Well, the first level, Stage Fright, we see Juniper perform the Mask of Red Death, another famous work of Poe's. This show is quickly sabotaged, however, by the agent. We also see Edgar Allan Poe's books strewn about several levels as well, one on Juniper's Jet and one in the Fabricator's Workshop, I believe. When we look at the story of I Expect You to Die 2 up to this point and A Cask of Amontillado, we have two wealthy, powerful men who feel they have been insulted and proceed to respond to the infraction by luring the insultee in with a promise of a treat. In Amontillado, it's the Amontillado, and in I Expect You to Die, it is either the food, drink, and cigars on the jet, or the promise of intel, depending on how you want to look at it. In the end, neither man intends on fulfilling their promise, only wanting to lead the causer of their embarrassment to their deaths. It is undeniable that the Fabricator has a much closer relationship with Zor than any other operative we see. Where others tense up and end up unpleasantly surprised when Zor calls them, the Fabricator has a friendly, almost equal-sounding relationship with the Doctor. While I think this is mostly due to her loyalty to the Doctor and Zaraxis overall, there are other interesting things to take into account. Leading up to I Expect You to Die 3, Schell released a bunch of files on the various Zaraxis operatives, one of which being the Fabricators. With this file, we learn that she is a brunette with hazel eyes and an affinity for the color black. Seemingly minor details, but they become very interesting when we take into account another key player in I Expect You to Die, Valerie Vitti. Highly suspected to be the Phantom, Vitti has brown hair, hazel eyes, and an affinity for the color black. While I don't think for even a second that Vitti and the Fabricator are one and the same, I do find it interesting that Dr. Zor seems to have a type, for lack of a better term. If you take Vitti and Fabricator's photos and overlay them over each other, the similarities are frankly uncanny. Maybe Zor innately trusts someone who reminds them of their lost ally, or maybe they just like short, scary brunettes. I Expect You to Die is wonderful at making rich, detailed set pieces that make immersion in their spy games truly remarkable. They clearly make many, if not all, of their pieces from scratch, including the agent's passport. But looking at the details of it could raise certain alarms for those who have brain rot as intense as mine. A red cover with an access globe? Where have we seen that before? Many times before. Indeed, the passport looks more like one commissioned for a Zaraxis worker than an EOD agent, something that is particularly concerning if that's who the EOD has to get their agency passports from. While at a glance one could draw parallels between the passport and the ones given to an actual UN representative in our world, some things don't line up. The passport is greatly simplified when compared to those of the UN, and we know that making microscopic details is absolutely not outside of Schell's wheelhouse. This game is full of detailed, polished pieces that are sometimes so little it's hard for the player to even see. In addition to this, from what I saw, there are multiple colors a UN passport can come in depending on rank, so there's no point in making this passport red and not, say, black or blue or some alternate color, since I Expect You to Die's governments aren't even like the real-world governments. And that's the real kicker. The governments we see in I Expect You to Die 2 have a whole world split into 4 sectors, each with their own head leaders and governmental system. The Hudson Federation has a premier, the South Atlantic Union has a president, the Mediterranean Commonwealth has a prime minister, and the Pacific League has a chancellor. While we can conclude that there are still countries beneath those unions thanks to a JFK reference and a mentioning of Russians, the UN doesn't exist how we know it, and thus would have no bearing in what the passport had to look like. So, is this Zor-branded passport a sign of danger? Or just a funny coincidence? Throughout all of I Expect You to Die, when you inevitably lose a mission and die in a horrifying way with a silly little animation, you are given a coroner report with how you died and usually a short message from the person who printed it. But these game over screens aren't just a fun way to have you restart the level, they actually reflect the agent's predicament and tell the story of escalation of Agent Phoenix's reputation. In the first I Expect You to Die, the coroner report is left in an EOD records room, a simple report saying how the agent died and that the agency cannot stop fighting Zaraxis, alongside what's likely an agency-exclusive paper about Zor being evil. Then in the second one, the coroner report is still written by the EOD, but seems to be getting stored in a Zaraxis building, likely indicating that Zaraxis wanted confirmation that this particular agent was out of the way. The agency seems more desperate than last time, saying that they do feel bad for those on bereavement, likely the agent's handler, but that this is not the time to stop or slow down. Then most recently, we actually get a coroner report from Zaraxis, the report getting printed off in what looks to be a boardroom of Zor's with a note that, while Zor understands the cause for celebration, there is still work to be done. This paints a pretty clear story. Initially, the agent was just one of hundreds of workers at the EOD, but as time has gone on, they've been a recurrent thorn in Dr. Zor's side. Because of this, by the time we get to I Expect You to Die 2, the Doctor is keeping tabs on the agent, but isn't fretting over them. If the agent dies, they want proof, thus sending an operative from Zoraxis to get confirmation from the EOD, but by the time we reach I Expect You to Die 3, the agent has proven to not simply be an annoyance, but a serious problem. They continuously destroy Zoraxis' work and have caused major setbacks in only a few months on the field. If the agent dies, they need to be one of the first people to know, and everyone at Zoraxis has an eye out for the Phoenix. And that is where I'm calling it for this video. I could go on for hours about this franchise. I have gone on for hours about this franchise. But then this wouldn't be a quick filler video, and I would have 2 multi-hour long projects. I hope you enjoyed. Please leave your observations below, and if you'd like to hear more ramblings from a hyper-fixated hot mess, please subscribe. Maybe you'll hear from me before a year almost passes this time. Until next time, agents!